So, I come from a pretty standard middle class family. Growing up, I knew that I would never get much help from my college education from my parents, and it wasn't because they didn't want to help me, it was because they just couldn't afford to. They were already living paycheck to paycheck most of the time, so I knew I could never really ask them to help pay for my college. But some people find themselves in college's golden land, where they have plenty of financial ability to send their child to school. Some families are on the other extreme with very low income and assets and will receive a lot of need-based help. But what if you're in the middle like my family? You don't really receive much help from anyone. If you're a middle-class family, it's likely that your expected contribution rate is a lot higher than you think. Additionally, most of these families are out of the need-based aid, but actually in reality do not make enough money to help send their child to school. Middle-class families often do not make enough money to help their children pay for college, yet they rarely receive any financial aid elsewhere. Madeline Armour said in her article, "It can be hard for middle-income families to afford higher education, as their expected family contribution rates can be in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. There's not a lot of discretionary income for middle-income families." Alex Sticiani was one of those kids who grew up in a middle-class family. He knew that he needed to go to a college that would give really good financial aid. It's kind of something that students in the middle class assume they kind of can't get a lot of the time, and he didn't. In his first 2 years of college, he only got a small break in tuition because of his academics. He was burning through his savings and thought he couldn't possibly afford to continue school. And we're going to come back to him later. In an article by Marcus in 2021, it says, "A quarter of middle-class high school students who don't plan on college said it was because of the expense." In another article by Baum in 2020, the share of students from the middle class has fallen in the last 2 decades from 48% to 42%. Based on these statistics, that means unless something changes, less and less middle-class students will move on to higher education. College is important for so many reasons, including long-term financial gain, job stability, career satisfaction, and success outside of the workplace, according to Bogle in 2017. More and more kids will lose these life advantages because no one is willing to help them. Colleges and the federal government should offer more grants and scholarships to those in the middle class. For families that make under $50,000 a year, their child's tuition is often basically paid for by the federal government and the college's need-based grants and scholarships. But as soon as you make over that number, often they expect the family to pay most of the tuition. However, according to Selingo in 2021, colleges claim they can't afford to dedicate the needed dollars to financial aid for both low-income and middle-class families. This is a false claim in most situations. The issue is that some colleges don't want to pay for such investments by taking away from higher-income students who only enroll because they are enticed with generous packages. For too many colleges, financial aid has become a recruitment and enrollment management tool rather than an affordability mechanism. Let's head back to the story of Alec. Thankfully for Alec, the University of Virginia began a full tuition scholarship for in-state students making up to $80,000 a year. He and hundreds of others transferred there to avoid thousands of dollars of debt, but he said it would have still been heartbreaking if he had gone to his dream university and couldn't be able to afford it. So let's talk about some of the objections people may have. So the first one we're going to address is that some people may say that it costs too much for the school to do both low-income and middle-income programs. And let's go back to the article from Selingo in 2021 to answer that. I think that so many colleges will not have a problem affording this if they will take away those scholarships to the families who actually can afford to send them to school. And they're using that money just for recruitment. But if they use that money towards the middle class families, so many more kids are going to be able to go to school. Another one Another objection that people may have is it takes money away from the low-income families. And I think in most cases this won't be true, but if it does happen, low-income families often get paid to go to school. They get so much money from grants and scholarships and everything. So even if they took away that little bit where they get actually paid to go to school, they would still be going to school for free most of the time. So I don't think that that would be a problem for most of the schools. For thousands of students, college seems hopeless to them. They feel pressure on all sides to go to college, but they know they will receive zero help from their parents, the government, or the college. They know that if they do it, they'll be paying off student debt for years afterwards. Imagine the kind of weight on your shoulders. But now imagine the opposite. Imagine those students feeling that support and encouragement that they need from both the school and the government, that they feel like they can and should do this. That hopelessness is gone. They have the help they need and feel ready for school and to start one of the biggest steps of their lives. The fact is, there are too many people from middle-class families who can't afford college. However, we can help that if the federal government and the schools would provide financial aid. Write to your legislature. Write to the school. Tell your story if this situation seems familiar to you. Don't let the number of middle-class young adults who go to college drop lower. They deserve a chance at a good life, just like everybody else.